So, as most of you know, I recently finished a read-through of Eye of the World with Adison from the Everyday Negroes YouTube channel. If you didn't know that, now you know. And it was a blast. I loved talking with Adison about his perspective on this story and these characters. I'm going to link to the whole playlist below. It was great. But one of the things that I didn't predict was that going through the Eye of the World as slowly as we did, I actually started to notice new things. And it was kind of frustrating, actually, because I couldn't say anything to Adison about these things that I was picking up because I didn't want to spoil him. And yes, this video is going to have spoilers beyond book 1. I think the spoilers here will go through to Path of Daggers, which is book 8 of The Wheel of Time. So yeah, this series is so rereadable. I have been reading and rereading these books now for 2 decades, more than 2 decades, and I'm still picking up new things. It's amazing. But okay, so yeah, that's what this video is going to be. I'm going to tell you all the new things that I picked up while reading Eye of the World for, I don't even know, the umpteenth time.
Let's be nerdy, bitch. Let's be nerdy, let's be nerdy. Let's be nerdy, bitch. Let's be nerdy, bitch. Let's be nerdy, let's be nerdy, bitch.
So one of the first things I noticed was not that big a deal, really, but it did jump out at me. A lot of people, myself included, will point to a lot of the foreshadowing that happens with Matt in book 1, like his whole, battles interest me thing, or when he gets the Trolloc catch pole like on his neck. Those are really, really cool. But this time around, I noticed something new, a new one. He is, I think, the first person to verbally express interest in fireworks. Rand had been thinking about fireworks, but when Sen Bui lets something slip in a conversation, like he says something about fireworks, Matt is the one who jumps on it. It's not a huge thing, but it did catch my eye this time around, or my ear. I was listening to the audiobooks. Okay, but the next thing in my notes here did actually kind of blow my mind, because I can't believe that I never put this together. It was something Adison said that made me suddenly go, what? Okay, so here it is. When Rand and company, they jump on the spray. It's Rand and Matt and Tom, right? They jump on the spray. It's Bail Domon's ship. They're being chased by Trollocs, and Bail Domon says, "Oh, these Trollocs, they do be following me." Adison pointed out that was a really odd thing for Bail Domon to say. Like, why does he think that the Trollocs are following him? I think Adison actually said, is he that arrogant or big-headed or whatever? And when Adison said that, my brain kind of, it exploded, because, of course, the implication of Bail Domon saying that is that, yes, he has been followed by Trollocs. And why on earth would Trollocs follow some random smuggler? I'll tell you why. Because this particular smuggler has a seal to the Dark One's prison on his ship. The Trollocs are following him to get that. I can't believe I never put that together before. The next thing on my list is not so much something that I noticed. It's something that I was looking for. For a while now, I've had this sort of pet theory. But I don't know if I believe my own theory, to be honest. But okay, this is a theory that just sort of plays in the back of my head sometimes. And here it is. When Moiraine, Lan, and Nynaeve, they are rescuing Perrin and Egwene from the White Cloaks, Moiraine uses this, barrage of lightning, right, to startle the horses during the rescue. That's the strategy. But it's not a single barrage of lightning. The way it happens is there is one lightning strike, and then there's a pause, and then there's the barrage of lightning. My theory, again, that I don't know if I entirely believe, is that the first lightning strike was Nynaeve, not Moiraine. So, this time around, when I was reading, I was paying very close attention to this particular scene to see if I could confirm or disprove my own theory. And neither happened, but I did confirm that there is nothing that disproves my theory. If that makes sense, I'm sorry. But that's the point that I'm at. There's nothing here that disproves my theory. Okay, so I'm gonna outline what happens in the scenes. Get your opinions on this. When Nynaeve is there with the horses, she's terrified, wondering when something is going to happen, whatever Moiraine is going to do. This is a direct quote from the book. I'm just going to read it here. It says, desperately, she wished for Moiraine not to wait on her return. Whatever the eye said I was going to do, let her do it now. Light, make her do it before, ... There's a lightning strike, right? And in that quote, we see two things. First of all, there's an implication that Moiraine was supposed to wait for Nynaeve to return, which didn't happen. The lightning strike happened right away. The next thing in that quote is Nynaeve's panic. And we know that emotion is a channeling trigger for Nynaeve. And we know, based on stuff that happens in the next book, that lightning is something that she can do. That, combined with the pause between the first lightning strike and then the barrage that comes after, I think it supports my theory. But it's never confirmed. And so I don't know if it's true. But I feel more confident in this theory than I did before, so I don't know. I guess I'm at like 65% sure I'm right. But okay, so that isn't something new, but thinking about it while reading this scene this time around, combined with the new perspective on the story that the show has given me, basically Moraine's point of view, it occurred to me that if this is true, if that first lightning strike is Nynaeve, Moiraine would have felt it, right? And then wouldn't she have said something? That had me almost ready to dismiss my own theory until literally a few pages later, or minutes later, audiobook. But okay, Nynaeve, we have Perrin there having come back after being tortured by the White Cloaks. He's covered in bruises, and Nynaeve is looking over Perrin. And if you remember, his bruises disappear. Nynaeve heals Perrin. And like that, Moiraine had nothing to do with that. But Moiraine was right there. Moiraine totally saw Nynaeve heal Perrin. In fact, she's probably the first person in the books to see Nynaeve use that form of healing that nobody else does. And Moiraine didn't say anything to anyone. So, yeah, Moiraine totally could have felt Nynaeve make lightning and then just gone with it and said nothing. That's saying nothing is a very, very, very Moiraine thing to do. Which, okay, then this made me realize something else that I think if you had asked me before, I would have known, but I never thought about it. Moiraine and Lan are bonded. Moiraine knows what Lan is feeling, and she can feel Lan falling in love with Nynaeve. And I don't know why, but that's not something I ever really thought about before. I knew it, but I think I only thought of it in the context of Moiraine seeing Nynaeve as a distraction from their mission or something. But this time around, I think this is definitely the influence of the show, but I do think that the text of the books fully supports this. This time around, I know, like, Moiraine and Lan are friends, right? They love each other. It's platonic, of course, but it's love. And she can feel his love for Nynaeve. And realizing that, it started to color some of the Moiraine and Nynaeve interactions in the story for me. Because now what I'm seeing is Moiraine being extra sensitive and careful with Nynaeve. Something Nynaeve, of course, doesn't see at all and probably would resent and whatever. Because, Nynaeve, huge chip on her shoulder when it comes to Moiraine. But whatever, that's how I started to see their interactions in the story. Moiraine looking at Nynaeve as someone that her dear friend loves, and she's wanting to protect Nynaeve for Lan's sake. It's an interesting perspective, and I think it actually adds more depth to the story. Okay, so moving on to the next point. You know that scene where Matt is in bed with his dagger sickness and everyone comes up to see him and he's all creepy and gross? For some reason, probably, the Nynaeve factor, I always remember what he says to Nynaeve. The whole pretty Nynaeve, whatever. I hear it in this creepy voice that gives me chills and whatever. But this time around, I noticed what he said to Egwene. Did y'all catch this? He calls her out as a dreamer. I'm going to, again, direct quote. He says, "Pretty Egwene, pretty as Nynaeve, and you share other things now too, you share other things now, don't you? Other dreams. What do you dream about now?" He calls her out as a dreamer. The foreshadowing in these books is so good. Okay, the next thing here I noticed in my notes, not so much about the books, but okay, it made me happy. in the books, I don't think, double check, correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, I don't think Loyal ever gets to see the grove at Tar Valon. But he does in the show! And that makes me just happy. Loyal got to see the grove. Yay! And that reminds me of something else that jumped out at me this time around, just because it's so different from the show. Elida. The first time we meet Elida in the books, do you remember what she's wearing? She's wearing green! I know in the show they're using clothing color as a shortcut, and I agree. I think it is smart, right? Otherwise, what are we doing? Are there everyone wearing like lanyards or name tags? I don't know, showing their Aja affiliation. It's dumb. So yeah, wearing clothing color, it makes sense, but it just cracks me up that Elida's first appearance in the books, of all the colors for her to be wearing, it's green. Okay, so I've sort of been going in chronological order because that's how I took my notes when reading. But for some reason, this particular point is here in my notes, so here is where it comes up. I don't know, maybe this thought came later. I'm not sure. But okay, this is a revelation I had about Tam. I love Tam. I think Tam is great. He is beloved in the fandom for a reason. He is awesome, but I've always thought he made one mistake as a father, and that was not telling Rand that he was adopted. How much of Rand's anxiety, especially in the early books, could have been relieved if he just had known that from early on? Like, if he learns about this information in the worst possible way, in a moment that was already traumatic, right? There was no way to dump that information during this time of like, oh, monsters exist and one of them just almost killed my dad and maybe he's not my dad. Like, there's no way that revelation was going to be anything but traumatic. But if Tam had just sat him down when he was old enough to understand and explained it to him, explained, that it doesn't matter, that the love they have for each other is the same as if they were blood related, that would have gone a long way in helping Rand cope for the first part of his whole journey through these books. But again, it was something Adison said that got me thinking about this in more detail. Adison joked that it was funny that Tam ended up with a red-headed wife to match his red-headed son. Like, he had jokes about, Tam on Tinder scrolling like, I need a redhead, I need somebody to match my red-headed son. Yeah, it's a funny joke. Canonically, it doesn't really track because, we know that Tam was already with Kari before he found Rand on Dragon Mount. But still, it is odd that his wife was well, it's not odd. It's Taviran, probably. But anyway, that got me thinking about how rare red hair is in the wetlands and how it is mainly associated with the Aiel. And I had the thought that Rand was actually kind of lucky, quote, slash Taviran, that his mom happened to be one of the rare wetlanders with red hair so that nobody questioned it. And that made me realize that the reason Tam probably didn't say anything and hid Rand's origins is that Rand is a child of, quote unquote, that he's a child of the enemy. Basically, it's very possible that Tam hid Rand's origins to avoid him having to deal with this world version of racism. Okay, moving on. I know a lot of people in the fandom talk about eye of the world isms. Things that Robert Jordan hadn't probably fully figured out in the first book, about the world and the way the magic system works. So this next point might just be one of those things. But, okay, can Moiraine unravel weaves or unpick weaves, whatever it is that happens in the Path of Daggers, where Avienda unweaves that gateway so that nobody can follow the residue, that thing. Can Moiraine do it? Now, the reason I'm asking this is because in chapter 49, if you remember, they've all just slept in the blight, and Moiraine did something fun with bending light to hide where they were. They're all packed up and they're ready to go the next morning, but they aren't leaving. And somebody, I think Matt, is like, why are we just waiting here? Why aren't we going? What are we waiting for? And Moiraine says, and again, direct quote, she says, "For me to remove the last vestige of what I did here last night. The residues would have dissipated on their own in a day, but I will not take any risk that I can avoid now. That sounds like it's the same thing that Aviendha does 7 books later in Path of Daggers. So probably an Eye of the World-ism, and yet if we take the, canon of the books as real, which my brain sometimes forgets that it's fiction made up by a person, if we take it like, that's what that sounds like. That's what it sounds like she's doing. And then, we meet the Green Man. And one of the first things I noticed here was that Matt was the one to ask Sameshta about the tree. The tree that he is going to have a very significant encounter with at some point in the future. Again, excellent foreshadowing with Matt in this book. Okay, the thing that stood out to me here was something that Sameshta says. He says, Aviendha Sora is not here. I have not rested beneath its ungentle branches in 2,000 years. What? Why 2,000? It's been 3,000 years since the breaking, right? So, and how long has it been since Sameshta was sent to guard the eye? I guess that there's a couple of 100 years after the breaking, so what, like 2,500 years? I don't know. I'm not good with numbers and timelines, but it was sometime after the breaking. We see it during Rand's trip through the columns. And then, of course, Aviendha Sora wasn't planted until the Gen Aiel founded Rereading. So, did Sameshta go to Rereading? I don't know. This is not the only question I have about Sameshta. Like, how did he get that scar? And I don't know. I want to know everything about Sameshta. I find it's fascinating. It's so different from everything else in these books. But he's fascinating. And I know that none of these answers are forthcoming. It's just another mystery about Sameshta that I will never know. And the final thing that I noticed here, it's not just one thing, actually. It's a running theme that I noticed. And yes, it has to do with Nynaeve. You knew it would, I'm sure. But this one, I think, is partially the slow pace. I was reading the book this time. But I also think it was definitely the influence of the show, which gave me someone's face to picture while reading. And that theme, Nynaeve's character gets a lot of slapstick comedy in the books. For example, when Moiraine tells her that she can channel, this moment always very serious to me, right? It's always hit me really, really hard because I feel Nynaeve's vulnerability in that moment of having something revealed that she is so deeply ashamed and afraid of. As a queer person, I totally feel that. But, if you read what happens to Nynaeve there, Moiraine says this to her, and then she literally falls on her ass. She doesn't slump down into a chair or to like a log that's there. No, Moiraine says something shocking. Nynaeve is standing, and then she falls down on her ass. If this scene played out on screen as written, it would look like something out of a cartoon. And speaking of cartoons, during Nynaeve's moment of supreme bravery, when she's cutting the horse lines, that lightning strike happens, right? And the horses start running in opposite directions. And she's holding on to their, lead lines or whatever, and she's lifted from the ground while she holds on to their reins. That is a scene straight out of a cartoon. I'm sure I've seen it dozens of times. And it doesn't stop there. In that scene I mentioned before, with Matt being all creepy McCreeperson and pretty Nynaeve and blah, blah, blah. When Moiraine comes in and she sees what's going on, I'm just going to direct quote from the books here again. Moiraine seized the wisdom by the shoulders, hauling her across the floor like a sack of grain. Nynaeve struggled and protested, but Moiraine did not release her until she was well away from the bed. The wisdom continued her protest as she got to her feet, angrily straightening her clothes, but Moiraine ignored her completely. Picturing these scenes with Zoe Robbins in my head, like with Rosamund Pike grabbing Zoe Robbins by the shoulders and bodily dragging her across the floor while Zoe struggles or whatever. It's pure slapstick. I know I've said this a million times. I am not a visual person, so having faces to put to the characters helped me picture these moments, and it's given some of the scenes a completely new vibe. And to be honest, I'm not sure how I feel about that. But that's it. That's all the things I had here on my list. Have you reread Eye of the World recently, or any of the Wheel of Time books recently? What have you picked up on your rereads? Let me know in the comments below. And if you like my content and you want to support me, I do have a Patreon. It is always linked in the description below. To my patrons, thank you so much. I am so grateful for you. And to everyone who supported and helped me with getting this avatar up and running with the fundraiser and just being patient with how long it took. I cannot thank you enough. You saw me talking with my hands in this video. It's so exciting. I'm so happy. Thank you so much. I honestly, I am more grateful than you can possibly know. Thank you. And with that, I am gonna end this here. So please like, subscribe, and I will see you next time. Bye.